Hey, Dr.
Hello.
Cloud, how you doing?
Good, Jason. How are you?
Yes, I'm here. I'm pretty good. Um, actually, I have some clouds in my family, so I've been told we're related very distantly. If that doesn't creep you out too much, but anyway, great to
Hey, I
talk to
just
you. I
feel
appreciate it.
I'm just feeling great empathy for you. If you're related to me, I'm sorry, but hey, that's welcome to the fam.
Thank you. Um, so my wife and I, we've been married for over 20 years, and um, started having some issues, probably just uncovering what was already there, and started going to marriage counseling, and um, I just kept hitting this block, and it was actually making it worse. And it's interesting that I called in today for the reason that our marriage counselor basically came to me and said, "I think your wife has borderline." And I had simultaneously, the week before I went to see her by myself, two people recommended the book "Stop Walking on Eggshells," and it was eye opening to me. It was a huge sense of, well, it was just eye opening because I could relate so much.
Mhm.
Um, and she's
And I'm
very
just going to say
borderline,
quickly,
borderline.
Jason, because some people don't know what that means. The term "walking on eggshells" and um, a lot of times the people that have things that trigger them, to high emotional states, and that's true of many different situations, but borderline personality disorder be one of them. A lot of times people start adapting to that so much because I don't want to upset her, or I don't want to upset him, or I don't want to trigger him, that they feel like they get really, really kind of constricted and they can't be free in their relationship. And so that's we have the term "walking on eggshells." Okay, so keep going, Jason.
So um, I I talked to our therapist. I have been getting frustrated with her because she didn't want to put thoughts in my head, and I think she just wanted to make darn sure that she was ready to stand behind this. And sure
Stand
enough,
behind stand behind
so I
what?
told her diagnosis,
But why do you
because
why
she could.
why do you need why do you what's the need to stand behind the diagnosis? Like, how did that help the marriage? What's the purpose?
Well, because she knew rightly so that if that my wife would say I was crazy for saying she had this. My wife doesn't see it and thinks that I'm you know she sees some of the symptoms of it and she says she'll work on it. As we found out in marriage counseling, it just panic. It was like
Whoops.
hitting a brick wall, and I didn't see
I'm losing
brokenness and heart
Jason.
change.
Jason, you went out on me on the cell phone there. You say that last couple of sentences again.
As we worked through marriage counseling, we dealt with a lot of the symptoms of it, but I
Yeah.
just kept saying I don't see heart change and brokenness of there's something else there. This counseling's making this worse. We're just pointing fingers and a lot of blaming and stuff that's in your books.
Yeah.
It was textbook from your boundaries books,
Yeah.
and so I kept
Okay. So
thinking
what?
I need a roadmap here, and just yeah.
So so what?
So
So she's diagnosed her as borderline personality. So what question does that bring up? How can I help you?
well, where we're at now is my wife doesn't want to go back and see her, and she's basically getting family and friends to say that she doesn't have it, and I don't feel like I feel like what I've read says that unless there's some type of backbreaker, which is separation or something like that, that they won't truly change. And I don't believe in divorce, and I have kids, and I don't really want to do
Yeah.
separation, but I I feel like just trying to treat symptoms is just kicking the can.
Well,
So my
no
question
doubt.
is there what
No,
would you
no
do?
doubt, no doubt about that. I mean, treating symptoms in almost any situation, what you've got to do is you got to get to the structural deficits that are causing the symptoms. And I don't know if she's correctly diagnosed or not. There's a lot of things. I mean, if you look at emotional instability and self-image problems and feelings of emptiness and impulse disorders and all of that, those are true of a lot of different things, right? So I don't know the construction of her personality, but you're right. You can't, if somebody can't emotionally regulate enough, to be which is kind of what we're talking about here, right? It's hard to resolve conflict when there's the absence of that. And generally speaking, what you're saying is that's got to be addressed. I don't know how it gets addressed just by getting somebody to accept a label, but the underlying problem, if that's the question, yeah, I mean she's got to be in horrible distress. So why doesn't she get, excuse me, in addition to the marriage counseling, some individual therapy?
Well, she did. She quit going to our counselor, and I actually wanted to quit going to the counselor too because it was making things worse.
Yeah.
It was making me so frustrated that we couldn't get to even agree on facts. So she went to somebody else, and she doesn't want our counselor to have reciprocal information with that counselor, and so she said she's dealing with it, but I disagree. I mean, I'm doubtful.
Okay. So she's going
Because
to it.
she doesn't want to.
She's going to an individual counselor, is that right?
Yeah, a psychiatrist. Yeah.
Well, a psychiatrist for medicine, or is she going to a psychiatrist for therapy?
Therapy. Maybe it's a
Therapy.
psychologist.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
That's good.
therapy.
Well, that doesn't mean that the two of you can't find another marriage counselor. And that's what I would suggest. And I would suggest doing a little research. You can call a bunch of people and find somebody that has a lot of experience working with couples, if this is a true diagnosis, working with couples, that all that is manifesting itself. So in other words, I think both are true. Here's the danger. The danger is there are some kinds of therapy where the frame and the therapist really, and I'm not talking about your therapist, I don't know him or her, but but borderlines, if she's borderline, when they tend to get into and you start opening stuff up, there's a lot of fragmentation that can happen, and there's a lot of chaos that can happen, and it takes a very very very
Yeah.
strong therapist to be able to hold the frame, well enough to be able to contain all of that. And they've also got to understand how to regulate the reactions and bring those back into the therapy and use those to help to resolve the conflict. And so, what I would do is it's great that she's getting individual therapy if that's helpful and with somebody that understands and is providing a good service for her. But I would want you in marriage counseling as well, because here's what happens a lot of times, in not only with borderlines, but other people. What happens is there's a splitting that happens. And so
Yeah.
what somebody can do is they can go to an individual therapist and gripe to that therapist about how bad the marriage is, right? And how bad the person is. And then kind of the therapy becomes the safe place, the marriage becomes the bad place. And that's a borderline dynamic anyway, if she has one. And then it just furthers the division. It doesn't further integration. So I'm a strong believer in you've got to have a therapy that the marriage is the client, not the person. And so the person
Well,
may need their own individual
okay.
therapy, but you got to have somebody holding this thing together.
Which is what we had, but she rejected as soon as, I mean, like you said, the splitting created so much confusion. I mean, I don't blame our therapist for having her head spinning because I didn't even know which way
Well,
was up. There was stuff that I was, you know, but I'm just saying, like, we tried that for almost a year, and
Well,
it was
hold on,
just
hold on.
round and round.
You tried that. I don't know what that is though. And again, I don't know the person. I don't know what happens. I'm not criticizing it, but a therapist who deals with borderlines all the time, you generally don't describe them as having their head spinning because they're the stable one in
Fair
there.
enough.
The borderlines head, head is spinning and they're making everybody else's head spin because they don't know how to deal with it. And so I would just say, if one therapy hasn't been successful, then I would, again, I would want a therapist for the marriage that has a lot of experience in treating borderlines, because here's what happens. Okay, it is not not at all. I mean, this is part of the problem. It's not unusual at all for a borderline to have something happen in the marriage counseling and bail on the marriage counseling. Okay, that's what they do.
Yeah.
That's part of the disorder. But that's also part of where the reaching into that bailout and that perceived abandonment and the fight or flight that goes before the perceived abandonment, that you go in and you help them regulate that and bring it back into the counseling. And that becomes part of the stabilizing process. And so I think my
Right.
answer is going to be the same, because I feel for you, but I just want you to, this is going to be hard to handle by yourself. You need a good marriage counselor to help you with it.
Right. But isn't some of the prerequisite of that is the person she's gonna know that this person was chosen because of borderline. Borderline's the worst word you can say right now. So that's gonna be
That's why I did the
kind
opening
of
of the program. That's why I asked you in the very beginning, what did it serve to have her to try to accept a label? I don't, I mean, maybe sometimes, but I wouldn't go advertising, hi, what I would do is I'd talk to the therapist and say, we're having troubles, okay? And these are the kind of troubles we're having. And you describe what happens, that it's hard to keep her in therapy or blah, 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 blah. And you describe, so you don't have to use the term. Anybody would recognize this.
okay.
But I just want you to find somebody
Yeah,
that can
I
help
think
you with it. What's that?
yeah, I don't think anybody wanted to use the label. I think for me I felt
It
like I
helps
was
you.
going insane and I was like, I need some kind
Yeah.
of roadmap to what I'm dealing with because this is not normal. This is not, hey, an emotional person. This is more than that. Give me some
Right.
type of roadmap.
Right.
And so there
And
was
let
some relief to being told that, but
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
yeah,
Let me validate something for you there. If the diagnosis is correct, okay, and it gets complicated sometimes because sometimes you have some people with there's PTSD that looks a lot like this sometimes also, with the getting triggered and the enraged, all the stuff that goes with it. Sometimes a differential diagnosis is also a mood disorder. You can have some bipolar people that just get. I mean, it's complicated. Okay, but somebody that knows what they're
yeah,
doing can figure that out. But here's the thing. I do want to encourage you when a a a broad kind of approach here that I think might help you. Okay. I want you to think of these two words together in everything that you do with her. Love and limits. Love and limits. Now,
yeah,
That's that's not a cure-all, but the cure-all will include that as the big frame. Because here's the problem with borderlines. They basically perceive any limit as abandonment, rejection, criticism, judgment, this, that, and the other. If you give them, any kind of limit, any kind of no, any kind of deprivation, any kind of anything, then any limit is seen as unloving and you go all bad. You're the
right,
worst person ever. You're terrible. You don't love me. Blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, right? Have you heard all that?
yep,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And all
Oh yeah.
all you did was say no to something, right? Now here's what
Right.
happens. Then that starts a whole chain of reactions. And then the borderline's emotional state are so powerful that they can actually get the person. Obviously, any of us would start to feel not very loving when you're getting treated like that. And so now they have an ability to turn a loving person into a persecutor, right? Because now we're at war. So the
Right.
love goes out the window. So now you are all bad in her eyes, right? And so the trick, and this is what I meant by a very strong therapist is able to do this. The trick is to be able to not be moved and not have somebody's head swimming, like you said, or spinning or whatever it was with that behavior, and be strong enough to continually be firm. What I mean by firm has nothing to do with tone. It just means I'm not moving, right? And be loving.
Yeah.
And so long term, what happens is they will move away with the abandonment and all that. But if the love and the limits, then they start to come back and reconnect, and that developmental rapprochement is reworked, and then that begins to integrate their personality structure. It's very, very difficult. But the danger is when you walk on eggshells and you're all love and no limits, or
Right.
when they turn you into angry limits with no love. And
Right.
broadly speaking, that's what we have to worry about. I feel for you. I feel for her. I wish we could go on. I've got to get some other callers, but did I answer your question?
You did. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
I wish I had an easier one for you, but my answer is two things. She needs some individual help in the with somebody that understands this, and it's very important to have a marriage counselor who understands how to hold y'all together while she is doing all the things that you described that she does. Thanks for your call. I wish I had more time to talk about this. You know, any answer in this scenario in a moment is going to seem and be insufficient. Um, but basically, I would say this, and if I had more time with Jason, I would say this as well. That all those years of that kind of attachment, she does. It seems, sounds like, have the ability to attach, and a lot of what goes into the etiology of a lot of borderline disorders is invalidation of their pain and experience when they were children, and so they don't have the internal ability to self-regulate. When you empathize with the child and you have good limits, both are important, then the limits get internalized as a structure to be able to empathize with themselves and calm themselves down, and they have the ability to self-regulate when they have an emotional state. Well, a lot of times if people are invalidated as children, oh, that didn't hurt. What are you crying? Stop it, or I'll give you, shut up, or I'll give you something to cry about. Or other kinds of lack of empathy and all of that. Those emotional states, they just start to build inside the child and they blow the circuitry. Okay. And there's no circuitry that can help calm them down. And so then that carries as a piece of equipment into adulthood. Somebody frustrates them, life frustrates them, circuitry gets blown up. There's no impulse control, there's no wiring that can calm them down. And the treatment of borderline personalities has to do with a lot of times not only holding the frame and the structure of the love and limits together, but using that relationship to help them self regulate and learning self regulation. You know, one of the big schools of this is dialectical therapy, uh, developed by Marsha Linehan a long time ago. Actually, was trained by her, and among others. But what she did was she pulled a lot of stuff together from a lot of different schools of thought, in my opinion, and emotional regulation and getting control of how they feel is a big part of this. So anyway, it we could go on and on, but my heart goes out to you. Get some help, somebody that understands.